Chair,
Okay.
so the meeting is now live.
Oh, just got to get this. Am I happy with it? Let me just got it. Yeah, lovely. Great. Welcome and going back into public session. Just before we start, I'd just like to welcome those who want Trish Fretton, our new employer representative from Brecon. Welcome, Trish. I hope you enjoyed it. I have met Trish. We've had a few words, and I hope you enjoy it. It's an experience, and you're learning things new all the while. So I hope you do enjoy your time with us. Welcome. Okay, then. Item 5, minutes of the last meeting. They've been circulated. Are you happy with that true were held on the 15th of July? True and correct record. Thank you, Hugh. Give me a second, please. Thank you, Adam. Okay, are we happy? Okay, thank you. Item 6, administration and governance report. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I might share my screen if that's okay with everybody. Bear me 1 second. Here we are. So hopefully that should now be appearing in front of you. It's not there already.
Yep.
That is there. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yep. Thanks, Chair. In the interest of time, it's quite a lengthy report, but I thought what I would do is rather than go through each bullet point, is I'll pick out the bits that I think might be interesting to committee and how they might impact on the fund. But obviously, as we're going, if there are any things that you want to discuss any further, or even after the meeting, then please just let me know. So I hope that's okay, Chair. I'll just scroll through and pick out the bits which I think are important for committee to know. So I think the first point I wanted to pull out was point 2.3 of this report, and that's just to make committee aware that the LGPS member website has actually launched some pages on helping scheme members in the financial cost of living crisis. There's various links in there which will help scheme members make various decisions about how they can take benefits, how to options available in respect of reducing contributions into the 50/50 scheme, for example, rather than opting out. So the LGPS community is trying to support scheme members through this time as well, and they've made this resource available. So if you do get any questions from scheme members, just wanted to make you aware that this is available on the web on the LGPS member website. Point 2.4 is an important one for committee to know. The annual SF3 return has been completed by Dan and his colleagues in finance. And this is essentially a return to the department who use it for benchmarking the LGPS. But we had a deadline, and we submitted it ahead of that Friday, 16th of September deadline as well. So all the information that the department need, they have from the fund. 2.5, I'm not going to go into. I have discussed the stronger nudge guidance previously, and that's just a change of process for the team involving additional voluntary contribution or certain additional voluntary contribution scheme members. 2.6, I'll briefly touch on just for background for new committee members and for existing members too. Essentially, the cost cap is a mechanism that's set out or designed to monitor the ongoing cost of the LGPS to make sure that it remains affordable. And if it's seen from the mechanism that the costs start either increasing or decreasing beyond a limit, then the scheme can be adjusted to bring it back in within that tolerance level. And that could be through things like adjusting scheme members' benefits through their accrual rates, either up or down, or adjusting contributions, etc. In June, the results of the first cost cap exercise were carried out, and it actually fell within the tolerances. So thankfully, there's no adjustments to the scheme, which we're grateful for as administrators, because it's very complicated enough as it is to try and explain changes to the scheme to our scheme members. So we haven't got to go through that exercise as part of this this latest cost cap test that's happened. So just for information, the scheme is not going to change in respect to that exercise. Just a brief update on pensions dashboards. You've heard me talk about these at previous meetings, and this will gather more momentum as time goes on. And just to remind committee that the pensions dashboard program is essentially a platform that will be made available for pension savers to log in one website and be able to access various bits of pension information from various pensions pots they might have. Obviously, the LGPS is a pension scheme which will be contributing to this. So the idea is that rather than a scheme member having, or a pension saver having lots of different logins to different websites, they're able to log into the pensions dashboard, and the dashboard will actually go and collate all the information from various different pension providers into one place to make it easier for pension savers to understand where their pensions are at. So a very useful resource for pension savers, but obviously there are implications on us as administrators in terms of having to make sure the data is available when requested by the dashboard. So it's not launched yet, and we're expected to have to integrate with the ecosystem in 2023, 2024. But there will be some work that we'll need to do to make sure we prepare for this, and we've got a work plan in place to make sure that we hit the deadlines when we need to. So just a bit of background on pension dashboards there. 3.2 is about the valuation. Committee will be aware that obviously we've been carrying out a valuation exercise based up to the 31st of March 2022. Section 151 officer and myself have met several times with the actuary since we submitted the data in July, and the report is progressing well, and the intention is that the actuary will be able to bring the final report to the committee meeting on the 16th of December for committee to be able to sign off the final results. However, anything that I do have before that, I will obviously circulate to committee so you can see it beforehand. But the intention is the actuary will present the results and the valuation to you at the 16th of December. And then we do have an employers meeting in the afternoon of the 16th as well, where we'll share the same report, but to the employers as well. So work's ongoing, and hopefully there'll be some more positive news to be able to give you as time moves on. Apologies for skipping through this, everybody, but please do stop me if you see anything that you want to pull out in more detail. Section 4 is just a collation of the pension regulator updates that have happened since I last presented the paper to you. Perhaps the most interesting one really is to do with 4.5, which is a statement that the regulator has issued in cooperation with the Department for Work and Pensions, DWP. And this is to do with a change to legislation that happened fairly recently, which actually gave administrators powers to not transfer out. What this is trying to do, it was intended to try and stop pension scams, or to reduce pension scams. And it actually gave us the power to say, no, we're not going to transfer out to the scheme. We can't get the information we need on it. We don't think it's a reliable scheme. Therefore, we're not transferring it out. We're going to keep it. It's in your interest to do that. What it turns out, what's happened from reading this paper is that it's actually raised flags on potential transfers that are absolutely fine. So they've issued a joint statement with the DWP to try and say, look, this wasn't the intention. Those transfers that are fine can continue, but there's more detail within that statement there. So a bit of a clarification around the intention behind the regulations there. So I just thought that was an interesting point.
Gosh, who monitors that, Chris? Who would?
Well, I guess if we have a suspected scam, a pension scam, then we shouldn't let the regulator know.
All right.
So it could be that the regulators had notification of various transfers that they've looked at and thought, actually, this is okay. The intention behind the amendment to regulations wasn't to stop these sorts of transfers happening. So I'd imagine this would come from, well, both the TPR and the Department for Work and Pensions as well, Hugh.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Do they review that on an annual basis, or how often do they do it, Chris?
I don't know, Arwell, to be honest. I'd imagine it's because they've been notified of various transfers that have come up. Administrators like us would have been working through various transfers and spotted things, I guess. It's not come from us. I read this in one of the LGA bulletins, but I'm going to imagine that the pension regulators probably had notification together with the DWP on potential transfers, and they thought, hang on, we need to issue a statement on this. So whether we'll see any clarification to the regulations as we go forward, I don't know. But it was just to point out that they've obviously spotted something.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So perhaps the biggest item within this paper is actually the risk register. Now we talk about this every meeting, as you'd be well aware. And over the past couple of meetings, I've brought an updated risk register where we've migrated from our old risk register software across to the council's corporate system. And on doing that, we took the opportunity to revisit it because it was starting to grow and get a bit unwieldy and harder to manage. So on the transfer across the council system, we actually broke it down into the 3 pillars of the pension fund, which are, as you can see, administration, government, governance, and investment. Now, I did present this to committee last time, and I had a couple of points of feedback, like a heat map would be useful so you can see the residual risks and whatnot. So we took that and actually met with the pensions board for a specific meeting to look at the risk register in September. And we spent a good bit of time looking at the administration part of the risk register. So what you've got that follow this report are the 3 pillars. There's been no new risks added, but the administration risk register has had some changes made to it in terms of increasing some of the scores, actually. So I sat down with the pensions board and we looked at it and thought, you know what, that initial score looks a little bit low. I think to properly and accurately reflect where we are now, bearing in mind that some of these risks were set up 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, we've just increased a few of the scores on them to bring them up to date. So the risk register that you see for governance and investment are exactly the same as what you saw before, apart from with a heat map, but administration we have brought up to date. So perhaps that's the one maybe we might want to spend a little bit of time on. And what I'm actually asking committee to do as part of this report is, if you're happy with the recommendations and the update to the administration risk register, if you can just approve it so that I can get it published and updated, if that's okay. So I'll come on to the risk register in a second. I'll just work through the rest of the report if that's okay. Number 6 is the breaches register. No new breaches added, just the existing 2, and they've just been brought up to date to keep on top of the numbers as they increase over time. Just to remind committee, as I do at every meeting, these 2 breaches are, one to do with the requirement within the regulations to pay a frozen refund to somebody who leaves within 5 years. Normally that's quite easy to do, but if we do lose contact with this person within the 5 years, we can't physically pay them the refund, and therefore we automatically breach legislation because we can't find the person to pay it to. We do carry out member tracing exercises periodically to try and locate these people to get these refunds paid, and we have paid a few, but it's just to make committee aware that as time moves on, more people get caught by this, so the number is increasing slightly. The other one is to do with the requirement under the disclosure regulations to notify a scheme member of the value of their benefits when they leave within a certain time period. One of those types is to notify people of their deferred benefits. So those scheme members who leave but are not entitled to payment of their benefits until sometime in the future, potentially 30, 40 years in the future. And because of resource, a decision was made to prioritise those who have an immediate payment of pension benefits, i.e. somebody retires, make sure we pay them. But for somebody who's not having benefits until 30 or 40 years time, we can push them down the queue a little bit and work on those more immediate ones. So we know that we haven't been hitting the timescales for some of these deferred members. However, we do still write to them when we're told that they've left and just give them some high level information to say, look, if you're under 2 years, you'll get a refund. If you're under 2 years but are transferred in, you've got a deferred benefit, we'll write to you with more information about those in future. And for those who've got more than 2 years, you've got a deferred benefit, again, we'll write to you in future. So we know we're not hitting them necessarily with information the regulations say, but we are giving them some high level information to say we will be in touch, and this is what you're entitled to. So that's not new, that's just a bit of background for committee, just to remind you. And again, I've just attached the breaches register for your information. So that's it for the report. So as I said, I think now it's okay. If it's okay, I'll just scroll down to the administration part of the risk register to have a quick look at. I'll try and make it so that you can see it on screen. Is that a decent size for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, I can read it, so it must be all right.
That's good news then, thank you. As I mentioned, one of the comments that committee had very sensibly at the last meeting was that, okay, risk register is useful, but a heat map would be really useful so we can see where the residual risks sit. So this heat map you can see in front of you is the residual risks after the mitigations have been put in place. So thankfully, we haven't got any that sat in the red category, but we do, because of these are tweaks to the scores, do have a few now that are sat in the amber category and a few that we're happy to accept in the greens. So listed at the bottom of the page there, the changing risks are the risks that the pensions board and I decided that we thought actually probably just need to tweak the scores a little bit, push them up just to reflect that some of these risks are a bit older. The world's changed. Let's just acknowledge that they are risks and score them accordingly. So you can see there's been 3 risks that have been increased there. And if I scroll down, those have been reflected within the actual risk register itself. So hopefully you've had the chance to look at them. As I say, there's no new risks added, just tweaks to scores. So really, I guess I'm looking for any comments for committee and ultimately looking for committee to be happy with the admin risk register so I can then get it published accordingly, if that's okay. So it's over to you, Chair and committee now for any comments.
Thanks, Chris. David?
Thank you, Chair. Just a general observation, Chris. I think I might have mentioned this at the last meeting, actually, with regard to risk. The risk reviews, I note with a lot of them, there's been no review for perhaps up to 2 years. Is that because they're not going to change? But and they're always going to be there, or is it simply a case that the review hasn't taken place?
No, that's not. That's yeah, that's a fair point, David. I review these risks regularly, and I know I do because I get emails from the system to tell me that I've done to do them. And we review this at our finance management team with Section 151 officer quarterly. So she's aware that these risks are done as well. So yeah, I do remember you making that comment now, David. So I'll have to look into that. Assurance I can give, I do review them. And Jane, as a 151 officer, knows I review them because they appear on her lists as well.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
But
It just needs updating, perhaps. Yeah.
It does. It's this column here, isn't it? The latest risk reviews.
That's it.
Yeah. Fair point. Thank you. I'll check that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
I think it says 2 years, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. You'll come back to us on that, Chris, then.
I will do, yeah. I'll try and get that updated for the next time I represent it to you, yeah.
Hugh?
Yeah, it's just an observation, really. I think it relates to what David was saying, really, in that there are 2 red coloured warning signs within the risk register, but they're inherent. That won't change because they are inherent, but it's the residual figure colour that we need to look at, Chris. That's how I interpret it. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Hugh. Yeah, there's some, by the nature of running a pension fund, there are some risks that are just higher than others. We can't change those, but we've got to take some comfort in our mitigation, really, to try and bring those down. So I agree. Yeah, it's the right-hand column of the 2 colours that you're interested in, really. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, no more hands up. Just the notice report, Doug. Is that the end?
That's the end, Chair. So yeah, if you're if committee are happy with the admin and what updated, perhaps maybe I can just review that latest risk reviews column before we publish it. I can maybe circulate that around committee, and if you're happy with that, then maybe I can look to get it published after that.
Okay. So we're happy then to note the contents of this report and approve recommendations made by the Pension Board of the Administration Risk Register. And as Chris says, he's just got a few to look at the latest risk review dates. So are you all happy with that? To note it, please. Propose the seconder.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy,
Thanks,
Chair.
Errol. Every happy? Looks like anyway. Okay, brilliant. Item 7, data improvement plan. Chris again.
That's me again. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Apologies, everyone. I can't see any, now I'm sharing my screen. I can't see any hands go up, so please do shout if you have any questions.
I'll shout.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Okay. Again, in the interest of time, there's not much changed in this report. In 2018, the fund produced a data improvement plan, and every year we carry out a data assessment against the pension regulators' criteria for common data and scheme-specific data. And when we do that, where we're not 100% quality of data against these criteria, we want to try and get there. So basically, this data improvement plan sets out how we're going to monitor our data, and where it's not 100% or where it's not correct, what are we going to do and how are we going to do it to get it up to where we want it to be. So we published it in 2018. Every 2 years we review it, and this is the review of the plan. So the covering report is just there for a bit of background. The actual plan itself, all that's changed is some grammar and some wording, and a couple of slight tweaks to make sure it still fits current working practices. But the actual content is exactly the same as what has been seen and approved and published previously. And this has been through the Pensions Board as well for comment. So those comments have been incorporated. So what you see in front of you today is hopefully something you can approve. As I say, it's no different to what's published and approved previously, just been brought up to date as part of our 2-year review process. So hopefully you've had the chance to read it, and it's over to Chair and committee for any comments that you might have.
Thanks, Chris. No hands up. So are you happy for us to note and approve the content of the updated data improvement plan?
I've read it. I'm happy.
Thanks, Hugh. Seconder, please.
Yeah, I'm happy, Chair.
Are we happy? Okay, then. Thank you, Chris, for the work.
Thank you both. I'll take that away and I'll get that translated and published and based on that approval. Thank you.
Okay, second, item number 8, communication strategy.
That's me again. Yes, thank you, Chair. This one is similar, but different insofar that this is a requirement under the regulations. So Regulation 61 of the LGPS regulations requires the administrating authority to have a communication strategy. We've had one for several years. And as with the previous report, this is just our 2-year review of that document. Again, same as the previous report, the content is very much the same. A few grammatical updates and a couple of tweaks just to reflect current working practices to make sure they're still appropriate. And again, a bit of assurance for committee. This has been to the Pensions Board for comment and review, and their comments have been taken on board as part of this strategy document that you see in front of you today. So this is already out there, published, and it's just been brought up to date as part of the 2-year review process. So again, it's just been brought to committee today just for a final stamp of approval if they're happy with it, so I can take it away, get it translated and published after the meeting, if that's okay.
Okay,
So
thanks,
again,
Chris.
happy to take any comments. Thank you, Chair.
Any comments?
No, I think it's quite comprehensive, Chair.
Yeah, it's quite easy read. Well done. It's just
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's
No, thank you, Hugh. Appreciate that.
does make a difference. It doesn't, and you take it in a lot easier. It's easier reading, don't you?
yeah.
Okay, thanks. Can I ask committee to approve a revised communication strategy statement in accordance with Regulation 61 of LGPS regulations?
Yeah, happy Chair.
Thank you, Harold. Seconder.
Oh, well, I will. I was thinking. Right.
No, Sam, and Adam's there as well. Great. Well, thank you. All in favour? Oh, yeah, my hands are up. Great, thank you. Item
you.
9, WPP update.
Yes, that's me again. Thank you, Chair. And this is the last one from me in the public part of the meeting. You'd be pleased to hear. As with every meeting, I do bring an update on what the WPP have been doing since we last spoke. Again, I think I might just pull out the appropriate points, if that's okay. So a lot of work has been going on in terms of the annual returns and reports that we have to do. You'll see we've got our annual report for committee to consider later on. The pool have been doing something similar in terms of their documentation as well. But before we get into that, perhaps the most important point to notify committee of is the fact that at the last meeting, the Councillor Christopher Weaver from Cardiff was appointed as the chair of the Joint Governance Committee, and Councillor Ted Palmer from Flintshire County Council was appointed as the vice chair of the Joint Governance Committee. So we now have a new chair and vice chair to help us and look after the committee at the pool level. Talk briefly about the annual return. I've hyperlinked to some documents within this report that have been published on the WPP website, and also included as part of Annex A, Appendix A, an update, a high-level update of what the WPP have been doing over the past 12 months for your information. Again, that has been published on their website, so that's out there for the public to see as well. Full statement of accounts has been worked on, and they've also produced an annual progress update on how they're progressing against their responsible investment policy commitments as well. So that last comment there that's in front of you, there's a hyperlink there just to show you a document of how the WPP feel they're progressing in terms of responsible investment, which might be interesting reading for you after the event if you haven't read it already. A couple of new a new policy, whistleblowing policy has been developed and that'll be published, and also a business continuity plan has been developed and produced just to identify how the WPP will conduct its business should various scenarios arrive. So again, I've hyperlinked to that. This is all available from their website. Perhaps the biggest development was something that's been touched on earlier on in the meeting, is to do with the Sustainable Active Equity Subfund. So at the last Joint Governance Committee, pleasing that the Joint Governance Committee actually approved a new active equity subfund, and which will be made available shortly for funds to invest in. And this has a much stronger focus on responsible investments, as we've already discussed as well. So we might hear some more about that later on in the meeting as well. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour about what's going on within WPP. There's an awful lot of work and time that goes into it from officers, Hymans, the host authority, and the Joint Governance Committee as well. So I've tried to pull out the appropriate bits that I think are interesting to committee since we last spoke. So just for information, and happy to take any comments or questions the committee might have. And back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any hands? I can't see any moment. Just this note, but I don't think you mentioned it. The September meeting was cancelled due to the death of the Queen, wasn't the funeral. We meant to have a meeting up in Carnarvon.
Yes, I think I know. I think I made a comment in the report, but I didn't actually pick it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I said yeah. It is. I thought
it was 21st September was cancelled. Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought those are like Trish. I am as Powers Chair, you become a member of a JGC Joint Governance Committee. So we represent, there's 8 of us altogether, 8 like Cardiff, Swansea, etc., all the funds, and I represent Powys on the GTC, which is very interesting. Okay then, since no hands up, are you happy to note this report of Chris? Thank you. Please. Pause a second.
Yeah,
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, happy to move.
Harold, thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Brilliant. Okay then, item 10, going to confidential session, excluding press and public. Carol, I forget who is phone on the are you do you
George.
switch the recording off, or what happens now, Carol?
Yeah, I'll now switch the recording off. So if you just do that for you.